Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about practicing with parallel and perpendicular lines. So this should be a review. The parallel lines are lines that never touch. So for them to never touch, they have to have the same slope, but they have to have different y-intercepts. If you remember, the reason why they have to have different y-intercepts is because if they have the same slope and the same y-intercept, well, they're the exact same line. So then they don't never touch, they touch all the time. So that's why they have to have different y-intercepts. And for the same slope, that explanation is because that's the only way two lines will never touch, is if they have the exact same slope. Okay, and then perpendicular lines are a little bit tougher to just kind of imagine. They're lines that form a right angle when they intersect. So if you remember, it's kind of like this. Then you'd have another one going here, and then that makes a right angle. So those lines would be perpendicular. And for the slopes, the slope of a line that's perpendicular to another one, the slope has to be the negative reciprocal of each other. So, and the negative reciprocal is the number that you can multiply by to get to -1, like it says here. So for 3, the negative reciprocal would be -1/3, because 3 times -1/3 equals -1, and that's what I wanted. And the other way to do it, if you don't want to think about what do I need to multiply by to get to -1, you can think, okay, well, I need to swap the numerator and denominator and then change the sign, because this is 3/1. Swap numerator and denominator, change the sign, you get -1/3. So hopefully that's a good review, and now let's get right into the problems. So first one, what is the equation of a line perpendicular to y equals x minus 4 and passes through the point -4, 1? So this is just similar to the ones we've done, it's just the perpendicular this time, so let's go do it. Okay. So if I want to find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to this line, I first need to find the slope of this one. And so to do that, I need to get in the form of y equals mx plus b. And luckily it's already pretty close, except I have a 2y instead of a y, so I need to divide everything by 2. And I'll end up with y equals x divided by 2 minus 4 divided by 2. I'm going to rewrite this so it makes a little bit more sense to me. Y equals, I can pull out that 1/2 x minus, and 4 divided by 2 is just 2. Okay, so that's the original line. And now let's think about the slope of the perpendicular. Well, the slope of the original is 1/2. I need the negative reciprocal, so what do I need to multiply 1/2 by to get to -1? That's going to be -2. So that's the slope of my new line. So right now the new line, I have y equals -2x plus b. I don't know what b is, but I'm given a point that this line has to go through. So when x is -4, y has to be 1, so I can plug that in and say 1 equals -2 times -4 plus b, and so that's 1 equals -2 times -4 is 8 plus b. Subtract 8 from both sides, we get b equals -7. So that is the y-intercept, and we have the slope, so we have the equation of the whole line. I'll write that in the middle here. Y equals, our slope was -2x minus 7. That's our line. So that's just a simple problem similar to the ones that we did on the practice with perpendicular lines. Alright, so now this one is another practice with parallel lines. So what is the equation of a line parallel to y equals 7/5 x plus 4, but also passing through the point 5, 2? So nothing crazy here again. This one's actually a little easier than the perpendicular one we just did, because we're given it like exactly how we want it with y equals mx plus b. Remember that m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And it has to pass through the point 5/2. Well, I know the slope of my parallel line has to be 7/5. So I have y equals 7/5 x plus b. I don't know what b is, but that's what I use this point to do. Same thing. And I get the y is 2 equals 7/5 times 5 plus b. Well, when I do 7/5 times 7 divided by 5 times 5, these will cancel, and I'll get 2 equals 7 plus b. So b must be -5, subtracting 7 from both sides, and I get y equals 7/5 x minus 5. So that's the equation of the line that's parallel to that one and goes to the point 5, 2. So nothing too hard there. Now this is one that we're going to start combining the parallel and the perpendicular lines and kind of do practice with both. So we want to know the slope of the lines that would be parallel and perpendicular to the line 3x plus 4y equals -8. Notice that these will be two different slopes. They won't be the same. You can't have one line that's both parallel and perpendicular, because to be perpendicular you have to create a right angle, which means you have to intersect. So these will be two separate slopes. So maybe I should write slopes. Okay, so well, right now we have 3x plus 4y equals negative 8. Whenever we do problems like this, we have to get it in the form y equals mx plus b because we have to know the slope. So we need to figure out that m value. So let's try to get y by itself. I'm going to bring the 3x over. Now I have 4y equals negative 8 minus 3x. Now I'm going to divide everything by 4. And let's see what that turns into. Y equals negative 8 divided by 4 minus 3/4 x. Let's reorder it to where it looks like y equals mx plus b. Y equals negative 3/4 x. Then what is negative 8 divided by 4? Well, that's just minus 2. Okay, so that's the original line. Okay, so for a parallel slope, as you know, for a parallel line, the slope has to be the same as the original. So parallel slope is going to be negative 3/4. And now for the perpendicular slope, it's going to be the negative reciprocal of negative 3/4. So one way to do it is to think about switching the numerator and denominator and then switching the sign as well. So the numerator is negative 3, that's going to be here now, and the denominator was 4, that's going to be in the numerator now. But then you switch the sign, so right now this whole thing is negative, but we're going to make it positive, so let me erase that negative. It's just going to be 4/3. And then also you could think about, well, is negative 3/4 times 4/3, does that equal negative 1? And it does, so that's it. The perpendicular slope will be 4/3, while the parallel slope will be negative 3/4. So that's kind of combining everything. And I believe we have another one here. Okay. So a line that contains the point negative 3/4 is perpendicular to the line y equals 2x minus 3. Find the point where the lines intersect. Okay. So a line that contains the point negative 3/4 is perpendicular to this line, and we want to know when the points intersect. Well, I need to figure out what this other line is. The line that's perpendicular to that line, that's my first step, and then I need to find where they intersect. But I can't figure out where two lines intersect if I don't even know what the other line is, so I need to find that first. So if it's going to be perpendicular to this line, well, let's first say the line slope. That's a good place to start. We know that the original one, it has a slope of 2, so the slope of the perpendicular line is negative 1/2. So right now I have y equals negative 1/2 x plus b, because it's already in the y equals mx plus b form, so m is the slope, so the slope is 2. Negative reciprocal of 2 is negative 1/2. So that's how I got to that negative 1/2. And now, same thing as we always do, we plug in the point they give us because we know that that has to be on the line. And we get, okay, well, 4 equals negative 1/2 times negative 3 plus b. Okay, so 4 equals negative 1/2 times negative 3. Well, negative times negative becomes positive, so I'll get 3/2 plus b. And 3/2 is the same as 1.5, so for this I'm just going to write 1.5. It'll make the subtraction a little bit easier, so subtract that 1.5 from both sides. And I'll just write this here, b equals 2.5. So we figured that out, but we don't have the equation of the whole line yet, so we got to do that. So y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2.5. This is the perpendicular one, and then the one that we're trying to find where they intersect is y equals 2x minus 3. So the question now is, where did these two lines intersect? And okay, so if they intersect, that means the x has to be the same and the y has to be the same. I already have them both in forms of y equals something. If I know that the y's need to be equivalent, I can set the two equations equal to each other because they have to be touching, so the y values have to be the same. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set negative 1/2 x plus 2.5. I'm going to set that equal to 2x minus 3. Okay, and now it's just like any algebra problem you solve for your variable. So I'm going to bring the 1/2 x to the other side, and that'll give me. And then I'm also going to add the 3 to the other side. May as well do everything in one step. Okay, and 2.5 plus 3 is going to give me 5.5 equals 2 plus 1/2 is 2.5x. Okay, and now to get x by itself, I would divide by 2.5. This is not going to be that clean of an answer, but nothing crazy. So it'll be 5.5 divided by, well, you can also think about 25 divided by 55 divided by 25, and that's going to be 2 1/5, so 2 1/5. And if you know 1/5 is a fraction, it's actually 2.2. So I'm going to leave it as 2.2 equals x. Let me check that really quick with my calculator here. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so 2.2 is x. Okay, so that's good. We found the x, but we want to know the point where they intersect. Remember, a point, you have to have the x and the y. So now I just plug that into either one of my equations that I want to, either one of these two up here. And when you're doing these, I would obviously prefer to do the easier one, and I think this one would be easier because there's no fraction in it. So let's say y equals 2 times my 2.2 minus 3. So y equals 2 times 2.2 is going to be 4.4 minus 3 equals 1.4. So the point where they intersect, I'm going to write right here. This is the answer to the problem. It's going to be the x value of 2.2, the y value of 1.4. That is where the lines intersect. And the key here is knowing that what that means is that, okay, so let me draw our coordinate plane. Let's have 2.2 here, 1.4 here. At this point, you have the line 2x minus 3, so that's going with the slope of 2, something like this. Then you have this line negative 1/2 x plus 2.5. It's going something like this. It's not the best line. It's going something like this or something. That means that when they intersect at that point, the two lines will form right angles. So that's what's so interesting. That's the definition of perpendicular, is that you get those right angles there, and that happens at this point, 2.2, 1.4. Hopefully this makes sense. This was a pretty challenging problem. If you can do this one, you should be able to do really any of the other ones that we've done, and you should have a good understanding of both parallel and perpendicular lines. So here are the notes again. If you want to jot anything down, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.